Hey everyone, welcome back. We are questioning constructs here for another episode. I'm Rebecca, and this is.
What's going on, y'all? I'm John. One of these days, I promise, one of these days, we won't have to introduce ourselves to all of you, but it'll likely be by when we start live streaming, if ever we get to that point. That'll be the day that we stop. That's what I'm. No, we'll introduce ourselves for the first 5 live streams,
Oh,
and then
the
after
first
the fifth
one.
one,
Why
after the
five
fifth
though?
one, you need to know who we are. All right.
Okay.
All right, our day fivers will be our true. Yeah, day 5 and below are the true ones.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. All of you
Let's
in the future,
let's
whoever you
disregard.
are, you're a true one. All right,
I
like,
was gonna say let's
comment,
disregard everyone who's been here
subscribe,
for 4 lives.
push all the buttons, whatever needs to be done. Follow us. You know.
Like, subscribe. Come on, John. You gotta know this.
Like, comment, and subscribe. We want that engagement, y'all.
Yeah.
We ask questions. We want to hear some damn
We
answers.
have
All right.
good questions too. Let's get some conversations started.
All right. So this one's been on my mind for a little while now. It's been on my mind since I put together uh, the thing that I introduced 2 episodes ago. The my goal
Oh, the goal
jar.
box. Yeah, the goal
Yeah.
jar.
Um, it's a question that is a little sad in nature, but it doesn't need to be. Um, my question that I kind of want to bring to the forefront, or a thought that's been on my mind, is a question of why do we sidestep our own dreams? One of the things that I find interesting after doing this practice of taking the time to identify things that are close to my heart, close to what I want to do, what I would like to achieve. Uh, After taking time to identify those things and put them together in a very easy to use, access, and produce results kind of formula, right? This jar, cutting the pieces of paper, whatever, right? Having this jar. Then there's an issue of pulling the pieces, which in theory is a very, very simple thing to do. Very simple. You just reach your hand in the jar and you pull, and then you read whatever it says, right? So this is a very simple idea in practice, but what I've found is that I will oftentimes wake up and move past the jar without pulling. I have it in a prominent place, but it is a bit of an issue that I'm noticing for myself. The fact that I'm willing to quite literally sidestep my dreams as I go on to do what I need to do for the day. A little bit, there is some kind of sadness for me there, because who wants to really come to terms with the fact that they're sidestepping themselves? There is a bit of sadness, but in the place that it doesn't have to be is the actual diagnosis of it and the progression from it. What can we do? Once we understand why. So that's kind of my question for
Mhm.
everybody, including you in this
Mhm.
particular case. Why do you think we tend to sidestep ourselves?
Yeah. I've thought about this for a really long time. And there's a couple of things that I think stand out that go into us sidestepping our dreams, even though, like, that's what we really want to do, right? And the two most important ones are expectations and belief systems. So, what does it mean to you when you are the person who picks out that goal and takes a step to it, right? What is the expectation there of yourself? And then additionally, what belief systems are you having to confront um, that are tied up around in that? So one of the things I've been realizing in my own life is how many expectations we put on ourselves all day long, every day. And then eventually these do lead into, I think, strengthening the belief systems that we already have. So I've been really practicing taking off any type of expectation. Those can look like, well, I just needed to do this, or um, if I take this action, then I know this is going to result. Like just any type of results expectations, action expectations, personality expectations. Oh, I should have known better. And I still did the thing, whatever the thing is for you. Um, these are all the different types of ways that we confine ourselves. And so when we look at achieving a dream, dreams are actually, in my belief, our natural state. You wouldn't have the dream. I heard someone say you wouldn't have the dream if you weren't meant to achieve it and do it. Not everyone gets the same dreams. So I think when one way that we try and pretend that we're getting closer to our dreams without actually taking the action that we need to take, which is freeing ourselves, is setting up all these other actions that look like we've made progress. So you stated one like, oh, like, well, I created this system to get closer to my goals, but then you have trouble pulling the piece of paper. Um, which, then like is pulling the piece of paper actually an action to get closer to them? No, it would be actually acting, doing something that leads you to that right direction, right? You're still at the doorway with just pulling the paper. Um, and then belief systems, I think I don't think many people have a concept of what it means to actually be free. Like freedom is our natural state of being, and yet all day long we confine and constrain ourselves. And same thing with our belief systems. So I think it's important to recognize as well that our belief systems, it may not be that the story you're telling yourself as to why you can't take that action is actually accurate. It may be just the story on the surface level that you're telling yourself because there is a huge belief system underneath that is too big to confront all at once. And that, again, is directly correlated to the expectations you have of yourself of the John who does complete his goals. And we think that the us now and the person that has the thing or is completing the goals, we think that there's just such a huge gap in between, but there's not really.
I think there are, well, there was a lot that was kind of said there in the, in that bit. And I think there's some things that I disagree with, some things that I absolutely agree with, and some things that just make me ponder. As far as like things that I agree with, I do feel like we do often put a lot of expectations on ourselves, and that there does need to be an understanding of what those expectations are. But I almost, this may be what I would call the disagreement. I don't know that not having any, or like freeing yourself from expectations is necessarily the answer that I think I end up at. Although it may be an answer for you all out there. But I almost feel if I've been like red pilled in this way, because in a lot of the not man spaces, I don't want to say that, right? Because like that's not the sector of the internet that I often find myself in. But I do watch a lot of debates and a lot of, you know there are these ideas of we should we should have responsibility that we are expected and we expect of ourselves to rise to, and that is an encouraging thing. Um, I think some of me feels that way. Like as an example, if um, I know that I need to make money to take care of my cat, because beyond me, I love my cat and I want her to eat food. So I need to have money to make sure that she eats food. So as much as I want to stay home and not do anything, I will wake up for her, right? Even if not for me. So I do feel like that can be used as a spurring tool in my mind. I kind of make sense of it as a spurring tool, having some responsibility, some expectation. But I think the
Uh,
expectation that you reference might be a little different than all expectation. Is that fair to say?
no, so I was gonna further clarify. I even meant those expectations too. And so let me
Okay.
kind of give an example because like expectations is something that I've been thinking about recently and developed a new perspective on within the last 2 weeks for this piece of it, right? So I would have said prior to me thinking about this more in depth that I shared and agreed with your statement that you do need some expectations because of responsibilities. But the conclusion that I've come to is my natural state of being already knows what it wants to do and is already like freeing myself from expectation allows me the freedom in which to already do the things that I'm naturally gravitating to go to do. And I would say your example, let's just take your example and I'm just going to generalize it just a little bit more. So like someone who doesn't want to go to work, right? Um there's a societal expectation and even a personal expectation of like you should provide for yourself and like your pets, right?
Loved
But
ones, yeah.
right. But what if it's those ways that we constrain ourselves instead of just accepting and not and knowing that maybe for that person a natural state of being is caretaking in that way. And so how does that change your perception on yourself? Is the job aligned to who you are as a person? And that's why you're having so much resistance to going is because it's not the right job for you. Or or here's the mental ways that it constrains you and why I try to just release all thoughts like that. Because if you are a father figure and you need to provide for a family, um, one of the societal expectations is that you will provide, like financially, usually for your family if it's a more traditional setup. Let's say you're having a really hard time making ends meet. Is it more or less beneficial to have in your mind that you are in some way failing providing for your family or accepting within yourself that you are a natural provider and seeing where that thought process leads you? Like essentially what it is it's opening up space for other things to come in instead of putting parameters around where your thoughts are going is how I'm viewing
Would
expectations in
you
that way.
would you say needing to provide for your family is the same as failing to provide for your family though?
I think if that's a that kind of also goes into belief systems. So if you have an expectation, I caught myself saying I need to myself a lot on all sorts of things. Things that were expectations and responsibilities and it even transferred into things that weren't. Like, oh, like I need to care for myself today. But the statement I need to care for myself versus I am a person that cares for myself are so different emotionally and mentally. So I've just kind of shifted and pivoted in that direction because I found that when I was saying I need, even if it was something that was healthy, it was bringing about the stress and then the expectation of like, I must do this instead of going, I'm a person that cares for myself. What does that look like today? instead of going, "Oh, like, I need to care for myself," what it like, and trying to think of, like, "What am I gonna do today?" Just, like, it's a more natural way for me of being. I am really curious if this resonates with some other people or even with you because it has decreased my stress level to a point where I just let myself have the space to exist how I want to exist, and I naturally am already doing some of those things even better than when I was before.
I don't think it's. Uh, I don't think it resonates with me.
Mm,
I feel like I'm at the almost the not necessarily the opposite end of the spectrum, but like I'm pretty far in the opposite direction. I would say
mhm,
because in my personal opinion, right? Not that I found. I don't want to be somebody who claims to have found success in any particular pathway. I'm still on that kind of path of discovery myself, but I've found that working within society means that I have to understand um, how I can function in productive ways is the phrasing that I'll use here. Now, that looks like a lot of different things for different people, and if I'm to understand your idea in this sense correctly, what you would say to that is something along the lines of why do you need to function within society? And I think we come from different places in that. Because for you, I feel, and I could be mistaken in this, but when you're your truest self in your mind,
mhm.
you don't have to worry about the constraints of society. You don't have to worry about the constraints of yourself. You don't have to worry about the constraints of others. You can just act with impunity because impunity is correct within the truest sense of you. Would
I think
that be?
that's a fair, statement. The only thing that I would shift is instead of saying, "I need to function within society," it's just giving yourself space to define what feels natural to you in terms of functioning, not meeting the expectation of, "I need to function within,"
That's so
if
it's
that's
interesting to have this conversation because we come
mhm,
from two very different places on this.
mhm,
Because I don't feel like I'm afforded an opportunity to do to do that, right? I feel like it's there are a lot of and I don't mean for any particular reason in and of itself other than my personal
mhm,
uh, alignment
mhm,
is what I'll say.
mhm,
Alignment could be used here. Like as an example, somebody says something to me that I dislike. I have to choose my tone of voice, the
mm,
character of my
mhm,
words,
mhm,
the proper response, and then take the proper response and tone that way down in order for it to be appealing for somebody. So, there are plenty of examples in the real world that, can be looked at where, unfortunately, it's hard for me to envision a lifestyle where I can
mm,
have those mental ideas in play all the time.
mhm,
And so for me, on my end, I feel like understanding not necessarily your place, although to some degree a place within society, what you deem acceptable within society,
mhm,
and how you choose to function within society allows you freedom, knowing the extent of which you can push, right? Which is fundamentally and I don't even want to say opposed at this point because I don't think we're on opposite ends of the spectrum as much as
right.
we're on different planes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, so there's a difference between being unchained, right, and playing within the bounds because there's a fundamental idea that we kind of separate in, which
Mhm,
is I actually don't know if this is the fundamental idea, but it's the like best amalgamation of words I can put at it,
Mhm.
which is the idea that one should be able to exist as they are to the truest extent of
Mhm.
themselves,
Mhm.
and one must be a fundamental part of a working system in order to achieve something great within
Mhm.
or potentially achieve
Mhm.
something great
Mhm.
within said system,
Mhm.
right? And I
And I
think,
think both are accurate for sure.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't, they don't necessarily like do this,
Yeah.
but you arrive at different conclusions because of
Yeah.
fundamental ideas
I
there.
think so if I can just expand on the last example just slightly, because I think this will actually articulate what you were just saying, where I almost view those two statements, they're complementary. But like you said, like looking through it at different panes, and here's why. So taking this statement, I need to function within society. Um, the two differences. So that statement is like you are trying to. When I think of, if I said that to myself, I would be looking at an out external situation and going, okay, how do I meet this need? How do I integrate myself into this? The way that I look at it is instead of saying I need to function within society, I say how do I want to take my value and showcase that or integrate that into society? Because one to me is like me overextend not overextending, but essentially trying to meet something that isn't necessarily set up for me versus taking myself and integrating myself into the piece of society. They're both actions, but one to me at this point in my life feels more natural. I also think it's determined by how how much self-awareness and self-like you have or self-love you have for yourself, because now like I have truly done enough work to say that I truly love who I am as a person. I'm not done growing, right? Like I am taking things from society as feedback and going, "Oh, okay, like in what ways do I want to incorporate this within myself?" But one of the fundamental changes is I'm not defining myself by external things anymore, but I am allowing external things to show me what areas do I still want to grow, change, um, what feedback will help me become an even better version of myself. And so I think that's just the difference. Like when I hear both of us talking about it, both people in the scenario are taking action. It's just how the action feels when you're taking it, if that makes sense.
So, hmm. So yes, yes, and I guess in a sense, I do agree with that. How the action was being taken, but I feel like um,
Are you saying
if you
that
had a
you
city
Mhm,
underwater,
mhm,
right, and a city above water,
mhm,
right, I think those cities fundamentally look different, and
mm,
so the decision of the merman to go catch food, right, is probably a different endeavor than a fisherman going to catch food,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
And
mhm.
so the end conclusion is they both want to eat,
Yeah, yeah.
right? They're
Mhm.
both looking to do a thing, and I think that's where we are.
Yeah,
I think in this case your pick, you can either be merwoman or fisherman,
yeah.
but we're both on like in separate biomes in a sense that
Mhm,
are looking to hit that same plane.
mhm.
um, so in some sense I understand, in some other senses you still bewilder me, and you
I'm a creature of
probably will
nature.
continue to into into the future. Yeah, it's really difficult for me to wrap my mind around that, but I feel like again there are so many different things at play that probably lead to these different mindsets, from our from our race and our background to
Mhm.
our our schooling
Mhm.
to our parents to
Yeah.
our siblings to
Mindset.
our exactly. There's so
Mhm.
many different things that play into our ideas of functioning in society,
Mhm.
in one way or another.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an interesting conversation to have with you
Mhm.
for sure.
Mhm.
I, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, and I think I would be really curious what other people would say in an expanded conversation because I think you would find that, like, there's not one way of being integrated into society, and I
I don't
think
think we even have the like. I think we're probably two of like 100+ different
right,
ideas
right.
of what it
Yeah,
means to be functioning
yeah,
as a human,
yeah,
right? As
yeah,
a human first,
yeah.
what that means to function and what inspires function and what
Mhm,
is function even
mhm,
something that is
mhm,
a goal to be achieved, right? I
mhm,
think there's so many I mean, it's philosophy. There's so many
mhm,
different ideas at play, and this is why philosophers debate
mhm,
and conversations are had, and different ideas are thrown out there and thrown at the wall to see what sticks. To kind of tie it back in, I think this is part of the reason why I like to hedge is because there's so many different approaches to problems that can or cannot lead to solutions. Um, and so, looking at the initial question from this lens of like, why is it that we sidestep ourselves? For me, when I think about it, right, um, the reason I feel as though I sidestep myself is for a number of different factors. I think the biggest one is um, focus. I think focus is a huge factor, and priority. I think priority is a huge factor. Where do you put yourself on your priority scale?
mm,
A lot of times we like to think our priority is us, often. And I would argue that you've heard me say this before. I know for sure you've heard me say this, but I think people should be more selfish.
mm,
uh, I think people should be selfish in the best ways, and I need to take my own advice when I say this. But things like going to school, right, furthering your education. If schooling is not for you, taking that thing that you're developed in, that you
mhm,
love, that you have made a profession that you enjoy to some degree, because work is work, right?
mhm,
Even the things you love have a bunch of stuff that you don't like doing, right? Like, nobody who loves making t-shirts is a fan of the packaging process, right? But it's a necessary evil, right? You have to be able to do one to do the other. And eventually the idea is you get so good at doing one you can hire other people to do the other, right? But at the end of the day, it's still work. Then you have to worry about accounting, right? I so whether it's the boxing, the accounting, if your love is making t-shirts, there's some part of the process that is going to be rough. Maybe it's just turning on your tablet when you're sitting in front of the computer to draw, right? Like these are the things that I think focus and priority could have a major role in if you know how to prioritize yourself and what that actually means, versus the idea of, oh, I'm just a selfish brat, right?
mhm,
Understanding how to prioritize yourself, I think, leads to accomplishing more of your goals. And
mhm,
then having the focus to look at those goals and say, it's worth me reaching my hand in the jar.
mhm,
Like, I'm good enough that I can reach my hand
mhm,
in the jar.
mhm.
Like, So I think it's a combination of those for me.
Yeah. I think there's two things that stood out in what you were saying. The first one is prioritizing yourself. I also think you need to have awareness. It's almost like prioritization awareness, because going back to what I was saying earlier, that we are very, very good at filling up our lives with all these tasks and things that don't actually add, like don't get us to where we want to go. Um and so I think prioritizing yourself is the same way. So you can say that you're a priority and do all the things that either externally society or you yourself has have deemed as a priority. That could be taking a bath, that could be reading a book, but like if it's not something that truly fills your cup up, then it shouldn't be prioritized by you. Not every single thing. Like how do I put this? Usually we only need a few things, but like, do you know what those few things are? And it's not that those few things are going to work for every single situation, but for example, I've learned about myself that if I want to get something done and I am trying to pretend that reality doesn't exist, giving myself 20 minutes to just mindlessly scroll on my phone or read a book to escape, and understanding that that's what I'm doing, is way more effective than taking an entire night to do self-care. So, like, how much awareness do you have of what you need to prioritize in order to get yourself to your optimum state? And then, additionally to what you said, I'm glad to see that society is getting better about this, about taking care of yourself first. But that also doesn't mean that you have to choose between yourself and others. Choosing yourself does have a value net add, and it should if you have the right priorities to others. So, like doing those things to care for yourself means you're going to be a more pleasant coworker. It means that you can take care of your family better. Um, and also recognize that even if you're not giving to somebody else, just your energy. Like, have you ever? It's the difference between going to work with that coworker that's just always joyful and positive, and that coworker that's just meh. Like, we can all be that joyful person, but a lot of times I don't think we allow ourselves to be, and part of that is prioritization of
That's
resources.
that's an interesting idea that we can all be that joyful person. I don't know that I could say that, but I definitely I wish we could. Well, not I wish we could all be, because I think even given a choice, I wouldn't want to be that person. Like I don't know.
You like the
You don't like
moodiness?
sarcasm. You don't like dark humor. Like you don't like goth girls. Like come on. I don't know. There's some
I think
like
that's hold on.
emo music.
That's an
Like
no. That's an interesting perspective, because I think when I say joyful person, there is a stereotypical image-ish that comes to mind, right? But like that doesn't mean that that's going to be you as a joyful human being. Joy shows up in a variety of ways.
that I agree with. Okay, see,
Yeah.
that's a statement I can stand
Yeah.
behind. I don't think we can all be that laughing guy going to work, making
Well,
everybody else smile.
yeah,
But what I can stand behind is everybody finding the things that bring joy within their lives and amplifying joy.
exactly.
That 1000% I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
stand behind. Okay,
yeah,
okay, all right. That
yeah.
clarity made the world of difference, because I was like, I don't even want to be that guy. That sounds like a Dover, like a Labrador retriever. Like, and I am not a Labrador. I, I'm a cat. All right, I'm not a Labrador. I'm a cat.
But
All
I
right,
think it's personality though. But like you know what I'm talking about though. Like each person, when they're in their joy,
joy.
it's
Yeah,
such a beautiful
yeah.
thing, no matter how it's expressing itself. But it doesn't, like, the people who are the like, oh hi, Like, the movie,
I
was it
can,
Inside Out with Joy?
bro. I
Like,
don't even talk to people who have a high pitched voice. I don't. Like, I shouldn't say that, but I
but the
am selective about the people I put around me for sure.
but the thing is, those people, like, that's a natural state to them. But so that's why I'm saying, like, your natural state of joy. I
I
think
think
that's a beautiful thing.
I think I'll tell you what I wish.
You think and you therefore you wish.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Steven Universe?
From what you've told me, I know the concept. But maybe for those, just explain like what Steven Universe is.
Steven Universe is a Cartoon Network show that, at its core, I guess, is about a a alien invasion, essentially, where a couple of aliens ended up on Earth and end up taking care of this kid. The aliens are basically gemstones, right? And this kid's, or I guess I should say, one of the alien leaders, basically got with a human guy, and they kind of had a life together. And she eventually has a kid, and the kid, along with a couple of other aliens that remained on Earth, formed like a rebellion team against other aliens. Anyway, whatever, right? That was a bad retelling of the show. Don't listen to me, okay? But I am specifically using the word alien here because it's fundamentally different from like the idea of just gemstones. But like they have this concept of like gemstones fusing together, or these aliens fusing together, where instead of it being one person or the other, right, these aliens will come together to make one greater whole. That is a mix of the two, right? And sometimes that amalgamates in a number of different ways. You have a lot of different ideas of relationship that are kind of shown in the show. And so one of the things that it makes me think of, or makes me wish, is that I could break myself down into each of these different gemstones, to identify, the core pieces of me, in order to have conversations more clearly, with
Mm,
myself,
hmm
the different parts of me. Like if I could take enthusiasm and speak with sadness, if I could have my joy, speak with my will, if I could have my frustration, speak with my enjoyment and gratitude. Like I would love to see what those conversations would be, because I feel like I don't take the time to have those conversations with myself. And I kind of wonder how many people often do. Um, I think it's hard to stop and have those conversations with yourself. I think it's hard to imagine what those conversations look like. And maybe it's on me to do a little research into what these conversations with thyself are supposed to be, because when I think, you've heard me complain about my own willpower and my own focus before. It's definitely something that's been an issue for many years, something that I've been tackling for a while. Very, very, very tied in with my depression, and my depressive tendencies. Um, and so I want to be somebody who's a little bit more willful, within life, somebody with a little more focus and determination, et cetera, et cetera. Part of the reason why I do this podcast with you, especially for days like today, where, to be frank, I'm sure you feel similarly. We're not in the greatest place right now.
We're not talking about that because I'm like 2 seconds away from crying. But yes,
Nevertheless,
yeah,
we're here.
agreed.
And that's important
Mm-hmm.
because it's a signpost that I am focused on these things, that it
Mm-hmm.
does matter to me, because it would have been easy to send another message and say, let's reschedule this again.
Yeah.
but we're here and we're talking.
Mhm.
Um, so, hey, shout out to us, first of all.
Yeah.
But secondly, that's a conversation that I'd like to have with myself that I
Mhm.
don't necessarily know that I understand the approach to. How do you separate those places in your mind in order to have a dialogue within oneself?
So I can give you some tools for that, but um I also want to preface this by saying I know there are people out there that don't have an inner voice. And so my experiences is with someone who, or myself, that does have an inner voice, but I don't necessarily know how this would be different if you didn't have an inner voice. But have you ever heard of internal family systems?
No.
Okay. So there is a really popular, very prevalent therapy modality that's been around for quite a bit. I it might have been developed in the 90s, but it's called internal family systems. And so the belief behind this theory or modality is that you are made up of different parts, and those parts talk to one another and talk to you. So like very similar to what you're saying with having your different emotions talk to one another, or even like if we're taking the concept of inside out, based on
Yeah.
internal family systems. And so um each of these parts is you or has information about an aspect of yourself. And so the parts are made up, or they are separated into different categories. So you have the managers who are doing exactly that, trying to control and manage to keep you safe. There are, I think it's called the defenders, which they're there again to keep you safe. And then there's the pieces of you that are really young parts, right? Those are the ones that are usually being protected by the managers, or some of the other um like the overseers or the controllers. And so when you're walking through internal family systems, like I would suggest like going to research this, because even in somatic therapy, they use this modality. And so usually what it starts off as is like asking yourself a question. So let's just say I'm feeling depressed one day, right? So I'll ask myself, usually it'll start off, okay, well, where are you feeling it? And you start to figure out where in your body you're having sensations. And then for me, because I've been doing this a long time and I've always been very sensitive to my body, it's a little bit easier. But just walking you through some of the things that you're going to typically experience. Um, and if you don't really notice anything about your body, there usually are physical signs. So if like you're doing this with somebody, like if your shoulders tense up, you might not know, but like someone else might see that. So when you're doing this with a therapist, that's they're going to point out those things. But then they'll take it deeper. They'll go, "Okay, oh, you feel it in your chest? Well, what does it feel like? I don't know, hollow. Okay, well, are there any colors associated with it? Is there, do you see anything?" And so sometimes I'll get colors, like a lot of times if it's depression, it'll be like darker, or like we'll have red in it, because depression, what's under depression is like sadness, grief, those emotions. And for me, sadness is always usually like red. um and then sometimes they'll say, oh yeah, like I have like an image of something. Or when you start to feel into these places more, you can start asking other questions like, do you have an age? Is there, can you see anything that happened? And for me, I'll always get kind of messages that come up. Not everyone does, but usually I'm able to identify, oh, so yeah, I'm feeling really depressed, and there's a piece of me that feels like it's 7, which sounds absurd, but like there's a really good book, The Body Keeps the Score, which talks about all of this and how us compared to animals have a way of always getting rid of a stressful event's energy. But we don't. Like horses will shake, dogs will shake, cats will do the little like, a back spasm, like all these things dispel the energy so that it doesn't build up or get stored in their bodies. We don't do that. So if you see a lot of videos, the new trend now is like people moving and like moving their arms and their bodies in weird and contorting themselves in weird ways. That's kind of similar to getting rid of this energy. But in the book, The Body Keeps the Score, we store all of those events within our body. And so when you're connecting with yourself, oh, yeah, I feel myself and I feel like I'm 7. And sometimes I'll get an image of a certain situation that pops up when I'm 7. All of this is really normal and natural because at that moment when you were 7 and you had that event, your body just was not capable of processing the entire energy of what, happened to you or what you were in. And so this is the residual um energy that's like in your body until you kind of work through it. But you work through these things and you know yourself better by connecting with those pieces and parts. Um and then to bring this full circle, as you go and do this more and more, you will understand about your emotions, and you'll even see, like, I can now feel when like the cycle of my emotions. So when I'm younger, let's say I'm like 25, I might be experiencing depression. But now that I've been doing this for so long, there are other emotions that I go through before I hit depression. And then in depression, I'm able to feel those other emotions and have conversations with all these parts. The last thing that I want to leave, that has such had such a profound impact and brings you back into a really into a loving state for yourself. So I learned this in somatic therapy, and it's such a powerful expression, but it's with anything that you're experiencing, I really strive to tell myself now, it makes sense why you feel that way. To that, whether it's my arm that feels weird, whether I feel weird, whether it's a specific part that I've identified that feels weird, I will either say, like, that makes so much sense why I feel this way, or that makes so much sense why you feel that way. Like what that's really communicating to yourself is like you're not trying to fix it, but like I can really understand and empathize with how you feel and I accept it. And it's in that accepting that you'll get a lot of that emotional release, and you will start noticing that your parts will come up and try talking to you, i.e. your emotions, more than they probably do now. Like there's a more clear line of communication. So what you're striving to do and wanting to do is clear up those lines of communication with yourself and your emotions. I think that's a great thing. But hopefully some of that explanation and that statement is helpful to somebody or to you with what you're wanting to do.
I think it's definitely something to look into. I'm gonna do some research at some point. This is also part of the problem is saying that I'm gonna do research at some point and then it gets pushed off into the nether. I will take some time to to take a look into this. Probably tonight before I go to sleep. I'll actually look some of this up. And actually take actionable steps because it's something that I do want to work on, right? And that's really the me reaching into the jar right now,
Mhm.
right? That's what that is, the proverbial jar.
Mhm.
Um, questions for you guys. I think I'd be interested to know what are the major pieces of you that you would kind of split your emotions into. Right. So
Mm.
like I named off a couple that stand out in my mind. Like you know, discipline would be one. I would want to have a conversation with discipline for sure. I don't know who this dude is, but he needs to get his ish together. All right, listen. I want that conversation with discipline. I want a conversation with rage. I want a conversation with
Mm.
rage. I want to have a conversation like, ooh, I would want to have a conversation with uh, patience. I think a conversation with patience would be frustrating,
You
but
wanna
it
have a
would be
conversation
good.
with
It'd be good.
frustration
Yeah,
yourself?
I'd like to have a conversation with frustration about my frustration on patience, and talk with patience about why I should be more patient with my frustration. Uh,
Oh, what that actually kinda reminded me, one last thing that I'll give to you, and this is so I heard this from a different creator, but she said, sometimes what I do is I play finger puppets or, like, hand puppets, and she will, like, have them talk to each other, and let me tell you, if it's not just, like, other things that you can do with your body to, like, have that knowing and, connect with those pieces. So if you really wanna have a conversation, as stupid as it seems, I did it once, and I was shocked by the viciousness of, like, I think I was doing, like, a younger part, and I don't know who she was talking to, but, like, younger part to older part, maybe, I don't know. But my younger part had things to say, and I was sitting there, and I was like, "Whoa, I did not know I felt this way." So
the
it just
T.
yeah, it just gives another way for you to for it gives voice to those parts, to that frustration or the rage or, you know? Um,
Absolutely.
my question, what belief system is holding you back from achieving your dreams? Don't think about it. First thing that comes to mind is usually, what your belief system is on.
Question that construct.
Question that construct. Oh, I love our name, by the way, and we really do question those constructs every day.
Thanks for everybody for tuning in. Everybody who will tune in the future.
Mhm.
I salute you in the future. That must be very interesting. And thanks for all the support, y'all.
Yeah, and, love having you. Start up those conversations. Be brave, be bold. We would love to
And
talk with you. So,
listen, dive head first, face down.
yes,
Head
all the
first,
way.
face down. All right, guys. We're out for now, but catch you later.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.